Hi, you're listening to Boggy Talk, Faith Conversations in the Mud, a resource of Church on Bayshore. We typically want every matter of faith and life to have crystal clear answers, but it isn't always that easy. This podcast digs in to help Christians think with a kingdom mentality about topics that sometimes get muddy and bog us down. So let's dive in.
Hey, and Happy New Year. Welcome to Boggy Talk. It's a new year, but it's the same Boggy Talk, same getting stuck in the mud about some things. But hey, we're kicking it off New Year, and we're going to kick it off with a New Year's episode.
Kicking it off New Year.
Looking back at 2022, looking ahead at 2023.
Wow.
That's so weird to say. And, you know, it's just going to take a while to get used to writing that because it always does. 2023.
You still write?
You know, well, when we have to fill out all our forms here that are still paper, yes, I do. So,
speaking of goals,
there you go.
Maybe by 2030.
There you go.
Maybe by 2030.
Yeah, but you know, we hope you guys had a great Christmas celebration, great New Year's celebration, and are looking forward to what's to come. Kids are still a lot of kids are still out of school. Some schools have started back, but yeah, you doing okay?
It's weird how the holidays worked this year because Christmas being on a weekend. It's kind of like we're back to work today, but weren't yesterday, even though it was the second, you know, like it's just kind of strange. And some people are back to work. Some people still got a week, right?
It kind of gives like a week to kind of ease into the year, I guess, because the Monday's off. So it's a little,
It's strange. It's strange,
but
we are rested and ready to go, brother.
Thankful for God's provision of rest.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Well, hey, before we look ahead to 2023, we just want to look back at 2022, just kind of remember some things.
Nah, man,
happened.
I don't look back. I don't look back.
We just
no looking
advance.
back.
No looking back.
No looking back. Just
but
kidding.
if you don't know where you've been, you don't know where you're going.
Ooh,
there you go. Deep thoughts on a New Year's morning.
I don't know that principle doesn't break down.
I don't think it's true. Like when you say it, it's not actually true, but
if you say it like you said it, kind of with that like half Matthew McConaughey,
yeah, that's right,
half Matthew Broderick voice.
That's
like,
right. It meets all the criteria to be on art at Hobby Lobby.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
That's what we.
No. There was no out of context scripture.
Oh, you could just throw one on there and just like, you know, and then be like, oh,
if you don't know where you've been, you don't know where you're going. Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created. If you don't know where you've been, you were nothing.
That's right.
So you need to know that to know
is the New Living
that you need to go to heaven,
translation.
Right? Romans 5:8. God demonstrated his love towards us that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us.
Yeah,
if you don't know where you've been, you don't know where you're going.
That's right.
There we go.
So dead alive. So
somebody's going to sell that t-shirt.
Yes, there you go. And man, we're missing out on all kinds of opportunities to monetize.
I bet it's out there.
Probably is.
I bet it's out there. Somebody let us know if that shirt exists.
Artificial intelligence is listening to this as it's streamed on someone's phone.
You should not talk about our listeners that way. You called them artificial intelligence?
So I'm saying it's listening to someone's phone and listening to that. So
looking back on 2022, what happened in 2022? Because I can't remember.
Man, a lot of things happened. I think, you know, worldwide, probably the biggest thing that affected things worldwide.
Georgia football, we know.
Yeah, go Dogs.
Okay.
I mean,
got a chance again here.
Yeah, we hope they didn't lose. We're recording this.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right.
They didn't lose. But if they did, you know what? It's football.
I dislike Ohio State. Like, I root for anybody against Ohio State, but I guarantee you that I will be rooting against the winner of Georgia and Ohio State in the championship.
Yeah, it'll probably
mean,
I really think Michigan, and then we have some great friends who are Michigan fans, and so we cheer for Michigan.
Ooh, that'll be fun.
But it'll be, so.
Y'all gonna hang out with them?
I don't know.
Have they invited you over yet?
They haven't.
Oh, they invited me and they didn't invite you?
Oh, sweet.
I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
So, hey.
2022, biggest thing.
I think the biggest worldwide event was probably the Russian invasion of Ukraine.
Yeah,
it affected so
big.
many things. That had a trickle-down effect on a lot of different things. But that was probably one of the biggest. Of course, there were, there was civil war in Somalia. There's a lot, but I think that probably worldwide because it affects so many different nations. You're affecting the trade supply. Is that right? The trades of many nations, including many nations that relied on Ukraine for their exports, including many nations like the third world countries that relied on those exports. And so we just saw massive ramifications of that. And then
the video game Street Fighter started to sell again a lot.
Oh man.
So you can fight against Barukan.
Yeah, that's right. It's so funny how in the 80s growing up, the bad guys were always Russians, and how they became, different groups, then in the late 90s and especially in the early 2000s. In the early 2000s, it became anyone from a Muslim nation, and and now it's back to Russians are the bad guys and everything, which,
and for some white evangelical males.
Yeah, that's true.
White evangelical males are the bad guys. Speaking of white evangelical males.
A major event. The deconstruction movement kind of hit full steam.
Yeah.
And we've talked about that before, how there is some merit in much of it, but we want to push towards healthy deconstruction. But going Ukraine inflation, that's one of the major effects we saw here in the U.S., and I think that's been on everyone's mind in 2022. Is just it was a hard year financially for many people, families, and organizations, businesses. Locally, in our state, Hurricane Ian happened.
Yeah, that was a big deal.
A very big deal. Midterm elections, that's every 2 years we have big elections nationwide, and we had midterm elections, which
DeSantis,
he was reelected here in our state. We saw the House become a Republican majority, and then the Senate became a Democrat majority. And related to nationwide things, we had the Dobbs versus Jackson decision, which overturned Roe versus Wade, which is
who won that, Dobbs or Jackson?
I never know the names.
I'm just asking so I could say I'm sorry, Miss Jackson.
Sorry, Miss Jackson.
I say that to Beth Jackson all the time, just so you know.
But that has major ramifications as it does.
I didn't know it was Dobbs. I just knew Dobbs case. That's all I knew.
So that was the official title, and which overturned Roe versus Wade. So there was no constitutional protection or right to abortion. Really pushing
no federal
it towards
constitution.
Federal, yes, really pushing it towards states. And then even just recently, in mid-December, the Respect for Marriage Act, which sought to protect LGBTQ marriages, and also lumped into that was interracial marriages, which I think that's a result of many years of that. I don't know. You're
like, how do I say this without sounding out of touch?
Right, but it was just
also not woke.
Tie those together. It is what it is, and so those are huge national threads that have affected things. So those are.
I alluded to the SBC sex abuse case. That was a big deal,
Absolutely. I think that the sex abuse report that came out from the convention this summer, and that has had major ramifications for individuals and for churches. And I do think ultimately steps in the right direction, and ultimately something churches are going to have to really wrestle with in years to come. As far as how they handle that. So
World Cup happened this year.
Yes, and the World Cup, for those of you who pay attention to soccer or football once every 4 years.
That would be me.
Cup. Yeah, it is. It's exciting and it's great. I think, so there you go. That the Olympics also happened earlier this year, but I really was like,
that's right.
The Winter Olympics, they're kind of a footnote now, but I was like, they did when I was reading through some events that happened in 2022. Just interesting.
Wow,
we kind of forget some of these things.
Interesting. Well, what about you, man? What would you say are a couple, maybe 3 big celebrations for you for the year?
So the first I'm going to say is I just am really thankful for how God worked in our family in 2022. I'm thankful. I feel like we see growth and fruit in all of our lives, and speaking specifically for our kids, it's just really neat to see them as they get older becoming who God created them to be. That doesn't mean that, of course, a lot of it was through struggle or, just things that, God's refining us, but just thankful, really just a celebration for that. A personal celebration is was able to go to India and visit with our pastors there. That's
been a minute since you went.
It has. It's just been so long, and we've planned this year, for several years now, and have had to postpone because of COVID, because of COVID travel restrictions here and there, but was able to just have just a rich time there, and I'm just thankful to be to have been able to be a part of that, and the continued part of that our church is. And then this is kind of just generic, but also I was just thinking, like I think at the end of 2022. A big win is that we made it. We made it through 2022.
We finally made it. Oh, not like that.
We've arrived. No, we haven't arrived, but I think, I've mentioned before, one of the things that we try to do each year is just throughout the year, write things down and put it in a jar. Then at New Year's, kind of pull it out and reflect as a family and doing that. We didn't do as many this year, I think, but because we've just been busier and not quite as intentional, but there are still
Sounds like
things.
Failure to me.
Yeah, it is failure, but it's also one because we did do at least a few.
Kidding.
But it is just good to look back and think, kind of chronologically through the calendar, events that happened, things that happened. It's just thankful that we're on this side of it and God has been faithful. So what about you, man? Some personal celebrations?
Yeah, I finally leveled up on Fortnite.
Hey, yeah, you made it to level 13. I don't even know levels.
I don't think I would have even leveled anything up. I don't even know if that makes
Supreme
sense.
Ruler level.
Dude, I've played like twice. I'm so terrible.
My kids wanted me to play because they wanted to make fun of how bad I was. And I was like, I don't even know how to work this. So
yes.
Yep.
I finished school.
Yes,
that's a big deal. And just grateful for that. It is kind of weird that I technically am Dr. James Ross, but anyway,
I thought you make all of our staff say that, and
I do,
bow our heads a little bit. As we acknowledge people,
just a little bit. And then I think being elected pastors conference, state pastors conference president is a pretty big deal. And I would say that both of those two things are really like, it's not about those two things. It's like all that went into those two things, which is just a ton of God's grace and a ton of Christy support and my children and the churches I've been a part of and the staff I've worked with and people I've built relationship. Like, it's just cool, to like see, like I really don't like being recognized. Like when people say like, I don't like being in the spotlight, I'm like, well, the Lord's called me to be like in like proclaiming the word in front of people. So I wouldn't say like, I don't like to be in the spotlight, but I don't like the attention to be on me, but when I was hearing some things said, I'm like, man, it's just, God's so gracious.
Yeah. Don't you like the older you get to, hopefully, and I think I see this in you. I think it's, my heart too. It's like, you just realize like it is God's grace and like, we're just so dependent on other people too.
Yeah,
you
right.
know how
Amen.
This is just a real culmination of so many different, like you just said, like so many different streams flowing into the river and it's all God's grace.
Yeah. And then I would just say, my children, like just they're growing physically, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, like, it's cool to see, so that would be that. So what about the church? Let's talk about the church and I'll get started there.
Yeah.
Let's talk about 3 celebrations for 2022 for the church. And I'll start, 30 something people baptized is indicative of 30 something people who have given their life to Jesus. Some this year, some it was kind of the fruit of the work the Lord's been doing in their life over, several years. But honestly, like, it's not that all the other things don't matter, but it's like all the other things, like we're good. We'll be good. Like we got Jesus. We'll go to heaven. These people now have Jesus. Like, I think that's a big deal. And then, the growth, like, And somebody was asking me like about, our growth as a church. They're like, what did you do? And I'm like, it's not as easy as that. It's like the culmination of so many things over so much time.
Like, how much time do you have? Because you have to dial back the clock. It's not just like this year things magically happened. It's like there is a clock of like for many, many, many years, this church, worked towards this direction.
So, but just seeing the number of people who are attending and in groups and the children and students, like that would be awesome. And then I would say kind of along that, which is growth, just the unity of leadership, whether paid or non-paid. And I would say the consistency we've had of leadership while bringing new people in, but has really created some stability to say, hey, I don't think like we're going to go back down tomorrow. Like, you know what I mean? So I would say those 3 things. What about you?
Absolutely. So I was going to mention baptisms and growth too, and I'm just thankful for that. And
I see blank. Copy what James says.
No, just repeat and say, I agree. It's funny. I put unity as well, but you focused on the leadership, and I was thinking more just as the church body. That doesn't mean we have disagreements or like that's part of God's process in the body of Christ. Some people like
7-11 songs and some people don't.
But I think ultimately we're at a place by God's grace where the vast majority of people who are, I think almost everybody who's involved in leadership and the vast majority of the church is just on board with the mission of making disciples. And we've got, and everybody's kind of in varying degrees of where they are in that and in the process of really embracing Believe, Belong, Become and, just really all in to living on this purpose, but I really do think there's a unity of purpose. There's a sweetness to the fellowship here that is unique. And I will also celebrate just the fact that we were able this year to re-engage in our global mission trips.
Big deal.
New Orleans trip happened, and I'm thankful for that, because leading up to New Orleans, many of the participants had to drop out because of sickness or health issues. And that was just a real bummer for the team. However, the team that went still had a great time, but we had 28 people serve on global trips this year.
That's amazing.
Which is really good. And I'm thankful for that. One, because I believe that each one of the ways that we are serving globally, they're meaningful partnerships. They're not just trips we send people on, but they're meaningful partnerships that we're either developing or have developed. And so it's pouring into that work. But also on the flip side, people are changed by that. And it really does affect the culture of the church when people have, when you just expand the kingdom worldview.
Yeah, that's good. Well, as we think about 2023, what are maybe 3 goals that you have for 2023?
So I will say, tied into the mission trips, we would love to see more participants on our trips. We are trying to offer more opportunities to, again, really deepen these partnerships, and with that, not just global. I think a goal for us here in 2023, I was about to say 24, but that's when some of this will happen. In 2023 is to really work to establish some partnerships with the church plants we're going to be supporting in 2023. We have supported Anchor Church in Freeport, but we have 2 churches that we are establishing a partnership with in 2023 through our budget and giving. One in North Carolina in what's the name of
New York City?
In New York City. No, I was like the Fort Bragg. That was like name, the name of the city, Fayetteville. Was escaping me. And then in New York City, and so I was just seeing what we can do to help strengthen these churches, and by sending teams, sending support is exciting to me, and then deepening our partnerships with our global trips. I think a next step for us and a goal really, and I think we all agree on this, we've talked about as a staff, is, as we've grown, we've really got to hone in on, getting people connected into disciple-making relationships through life groups, and then growing and multiplying our life groups and leaders. That's a big piece of this that can't be neglected. And I'm thankful for the work that Michael is doing. He's so methodical in the process, and he's gifted in that way. And then really,
we call him the Method Man.
Method Man. There you go. And then for me personally,
you're not a '90s rap guy, so you probably
I don't know
what that means.
I just can laugh.
Good.
Like,
it's all good. Yeah. Method Man.
Method Man. That's better than the Meth Man.
Yeah, that's true, but also maybe similar.
And then really, for me personally, and I think this is probably for all of our leaders, for me personally, in worship leadership, in missions, and in outreach, and in other areas and communications, is really to continue to and really do more intentional work in multiplying leaders and raising up leaders who are, and just pouring into people who can continue to carry the vision of the church. What about you?
Okay, I was going to say, you didn't ask.
But I'm so curious.
No, I would say a lot of goals, but if I were to give like 3 priority goals, I would say number 1 is just like health, physically healthy, emotionally healthy, spiritually healthy, intellectually healthy. And, with school being done, I can kind of set some new rhythms, and not that they all need to be new, but just making some choices there. And so kind of hitting the ground running with that, finding some more time with Christy. Like, just life is so crazy. Like, we got to find time to remind each other how much we like each other. So, and then I would say kind of not new vision, but like to clarify the vision of the church for the future. Like, what does it look like to continue down the direction we're going, the way the Lord's leading us? So help the church to see future possibilities. Like, what do we think we need to do facility wise? How many churches can we help? Like, plant. I mean, those kind of things, I think are things I want to get better at articulating. And when I say that, like, rely on a group of people to help me really like, hey, what is the Lord calling this group of people to do? And then I would just say, in general, investing in people. I'm starting a formal mentoring relationship with 4 guys who are in ministry or called to ministry. I want to be a little more intentional about discipling a few people in the Word, and then personal evangelism. So those would be mine there. So Well, what are kind of last thing? What are if Boggy Talk cares about you, and I say a big if
that's a big if.
How can they pray for you, Justin?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think one related to one of your goals, and I think that's a personal goal too for me, is just to have wisdom about what to give attention to, because there's a lot of things to give attention to in ministry life and in personal life, and to have wisdom in those decisions, to have boldness in those decisions, and then also to be present.
That's a good word.
I just think be present. I think that's a struggle on any day for most people because of the busyness and pace of life. But we've talked about that before, how we wear busyness like we brag about how busy we are and how I hate that and you hate that. And so we've talked about like saying, well, Mark, I'm just full.
Life is full, yeah.
But really like being present in those moments. And
Justin,
I think
the best present you can give us is being present. Well, that's right. Being present, yeah.
But so I think that's a huge way. I think, that kind of is, if you break it down, I would say, that's three ways to pray: is wisdom and boldness in those three ways for church, ministry, family, and then just in community, be present. Give people the attention that I need to give people.
Well, mine would be that you would ask me the same questions. I wish people would pray.
I just figured you were just jump in for you. So, hey, what about you?
Yeah. Well, one of them is humility. And so I wouldn't just assume that you...
that you care.
Yeah. I do think that the Lord has just done a work in my heart that, with kind of some of the positions I'm in now, that I don't take myself too seriously and I don't let it get to my head. But I've seen so many guys fall, man. Like
that is humbling and sobering.
Yeah. So I just ask for really humility to stay like understanding that he must increase and I must decrease, and protection from not only temptation, but protection from even anything that would just like hinder the effectiveness of the gospel through me. So that would be number one. And then wisdom. I mean, as you said, like just what to delegate, what not to delegate. Like I can't delegate my family, I mean, there are certain roles and as a pastor, like I can kind of say, hey, here are the things I want to continue to do, and here are the things we need to have other people do. And that needs to be around who God's wired me to be. Right. So just that kind of stuff. And then I would just say for my family, again, protection, several of my children that really either have understood the gospel recently or beginning to understand the gospel, so that would just take root. And that they would just really just flourish for Jesus. I mean, just be successful in order to point people to Jesus.
What they endeavor. Yeah. So absolutely.
I would say, this may or may not be one of your Boggy Talks you like. I mean, it may be one you really like, it may be one you don't like, but I would encourage you to be a person who does look back, who reflects, maybe with other people, and then to set goals. We say all the time, numbers don't end a conversation, they start a conversation. So it's not that the goal is like defining your worth, but it allows you to really just kind of evaluate how things are going. Exactly. I think it's healthy, man.
Yeah, it is. It's good. So take time. So at some point, just take time and set aside time to sit still for a minute and evaluate. And I typically go through, this was something that was taught to me, is go through your spiritual goals, physical goals, emotional or social goals, and intellectual goals. Like, what do you plan to grow in? What do you plan to learn, as far as community, and then, your physical goals, like set some goals, be realistic, but set some goals.
My physical goal is to make it to the NFL.
There you go. Well, I think that ship 41. Has sailed.
I would say the first 41-year-old, but Tom Brady's older than me.
Yeah, he's old, man. He's
he's looking old these days.
I think he's feeling it. I think he will not say it, but I would encourage you to do this if you have kids in your home, to do this with them, teach them. Last year I ended up making like a sheet, like a document sheet that kind of helped our kids kind of visually do this. If you want to
be a bed sheet because of the size of his family.
That's right. But I gave him all this piece of paper that I had designed, and it was like, hey, this is where you can write some things in, just to give them. And I think, as much as was appropriate for their age, each one and personality, each one of them, found value in some of it. And it's been good because I know we have one child who's it's been hanging on the wall, and one who it was underneath their bed, and one who
flushed it down the toilet.
Yeah, that's right. And that's okay. I mean, but it's good to revisit those things. Not that we just make goals and then never revisit. It's good to revisit those things. Like, hey, how's this going for you? Yeah. It also helps me as a parent know like what they're thinking and how to pray for them. I mean, just some specific things. Yeah. So if you want a copy of that, feel free to send me a message. I'll be happy to email it to you. So.
Yeah, let me just make 2 invitations. One to those who are part of our church, and even those who aren't, and might want to learn from this. We have our Vision Night coming up in about a month, Sunday night, February 5th, where we'll kind of celebrate what the Lord's done in our church, and then talk about kind of what's going to happen in this year tied to our big goals. And so we'll be sharing just some focuses, and I think that might be healthy for you as a church member to kind of understand what the Lord's doing and be bought in. And then also, we begin a new teaching series this upcoming Sunday in Galatians called Centered, really, which is about how we need to build our life and church around the gospel. So for Christians, I would say I think it'll be a really good kind of reminder of why we do what we do and who we are. But also, I think it's a great series to invite friends who are kind of, don't know where they stand with Jesus, don't know what they think about Jesus, just because it's really deep actually, but I think it's very simple.
Well, Galatians is one of those books that really the heart of the matter is the gospel, and, and that Jesus is the one who saves.
But it's so practical.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's a good.
We'll be talking about circumcision parties.
I'm about to say one of the things you're really excited about this series is that you're going to have to say circumcision and uncircumcision a lot.
It's so fun. The circumcision party. Doesn't that sound like
a
party we've probably been invited to before? We're like, no, we're not coming.
No,
I'm delegating that one to Michael.
Oh, that's terrible.
He could be a Moyle.
A what?
Nothing. Moving on.
Oh man.
Let's finish.
All right. So hey, we do. If you've got questions or just want to talk through some New Year's goals, we're happy to do that. We invite you to also just say, hey, bring somebody into this conversation with you. Share the goals with somebody, whether it's your spouse, whether it's your children or your parent, or because we have so many kids who listen to Boggy Talk, or someone in your life group, coworker. Just share it with them. That welcomes accountability and also some vulnerability, which is good, helps us grow. So,
what I'm looking forward to about 2023, Justin?
The Florida Gators are going to, no, just kidding. Cause they're probably not.
A great year of Boggy Talk.
It's going to be
I think
great.
It's going to be a great year.
We've got some things planned.
Yeah,
we got some guests we're inviting and, just some thoughts about where we're
He's making all this up right now.
We've got some incredibly, amazingly wonderful things.
You just can't wait.
You can't wait until it happens. So speaking of that, you're going to have to wait another week for the next Boggy Talk. Thanks for joining in.
Thanks for listening to Boggy Talk. We are so glad you joined in the conversation. Go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss a beat.